Hi, how are you? Let's discuss the concept of God today. Theists hold belief in the existence of God. Atheists reject the existence of God, and agnostics maintain a neutral stance, refraining from passing judgment on the matter, right? However, it is imperative to delve into the question of what each group means when they refer to God. What underlying concept of God serves as the foundation for this ongoing debate? It is worth noting that individuals may employ the term God to denote concepts that extend beyond the scope of the discussion at hand. For instance, some might interpret God as synonymous with energy, love, or nature. You get to hear those definitions all the time. While individuals are free to utilize the term God in various ways, it remains essential to define one's own concept or idea clearly to ensure precision in communication and thought. Moreover, before embarking on a debate regarding the existence of God, it is crucial to elucidate one's specific concept of God. Consider two individuals involved in a discussion about the existence of God. The first person envisions a God as an all-good, omnipotent, and omniscient being and asserts the existence of such a being. Meanwhile, the second individual views God as merely another appellation for nature. Unless we narrow our focus to a singular concept, the discussion could potentially lose its point. We would not wish to classify both debaters as theists who believe in the existence of God. Furthermore, it becomes evident that given the existence of nature, God undeniably exists in this particular sense of the term. To concentrate on a specific debate concerning the existence of God, we will center our attention on the more conventional and widely accepted notion, concept, or idea of God. So our discussion here delves into three primary aspects of the commonly embraced concept of God. And then we delve into some intricate enigmas and contradictions associated with their interpretation. Within the Abrahamic religious traditions, namely Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in all their guises and colors, the prevailing notion of God revolves around that of a flawless entity endowed with, at the very least, three fundamental attributes. One is omnipotence, which is possessing limitless power. The second is omni-benevolence, which is possessing absolute moral goodness. And third is omniscience, which is possessing infinite knowledge. Now, additional attributes frequently ascribed to this concept include 1. Necessary existence, that God exists is an inherent and irrevocable manner. 2. Aseity, God's existence is independent and uncaused by external factors. 3. Immutability, God remains unchanging. And 4. Eternal or everlasting existence. That means God exists across all temporal dimensions or beyond the constraints of time. The perception of God as a flawless entity is intricately linked to the attribution of these attributes. It stands to reason that a perfect being would inherently possess the utmost power, knowledge, and benevolence achievable. So here, let's direct our attention toward the initial three attributes, okay? Because they are often regarded as indispensable, signifying that a being can only be classified as God if it encompasses all three of these characteristics. In contrast, the latter attributes remain subject to more extensive debate. So omnipotence, the prevailing consensus acknowledges that the concept of God primarily entails an all-powerful or omnipotent entity. Okay, but what exactly does this mean? Saint Augustine proposed that omnipotence signifies that God can execute anything that aligns with God's will. Alright. However, the question arises, what can God will? Can God will that which is logically inconceivable, such as the sum of 2 and 3 equaling 4, or the creation of an object simultaneously possessing roundness and squareness? Both. Most thinkers contend that omnipotence is confined to the capacity to actualize logically coherent states of affairs while excluding contradictions. Interestingly, Descartes is often construed as asserting that God can accomplish anything, even if it defies logical possibility. Even if omnipotence is delimited to the realm of logical possibility, it presents quandaries. One enduring paradox scrutinized by Islamic thinker Ibn Rushd, also known as Averroes in the West, raises the question of whether God's omnipotence could enable the creation of a stone so heavy that God could not lift it. So the paradox unfolds as follows. If God can produce such a stone, then God lacks the power to lift it, thus negating omnipotence. Conversely, if God can create this stone, then God is not omnipotent since it represents an action beyond God's capability. Responses to this paradox frequently involve asserting that meticulous scrutiny reveals its lack of actual paradoxical nature. For instance, it may be argued that creation of such a stone is inherently illogical because it presents a contradiction by being both liftable and unliftable, and that renders it an impossibility. Alternatively, some contend that even if God can produce an unliftable stone, this does not challenge God's omnipotence, as it remains consistent with God's ability to lift any stone God creates regardless of its weight. Now, omnibenevolence. What exactly does it mean to be omnibenevolent or completely morally good? In essence, it implies being perfectly virtuous, consistently kind, generous and loving, devoid of malice or cruelty, never causing or permitting unnecessary harm, always doing right and never doing wrong. But here is where it gets intriguing. Can an omnibenevolent being like God ever choose to act immorally even if it never actually does so? So, in other words, does moral goodness entail an incapacity to do wrong? Or could an omnibenevolent entity theoretically do wrong but simply chooses not to? So, the first option raises a thorny question. If God's very nature inherently prevents it from doing wrong, can we still define this as goodness in a meaningful way? To draw a human parallel, think of two individuals, Julia and John. Julia is kind and generous because she believes that it is a good thing to do so, is the right thing to do so, and she actively strives to maintain these qualities even when tempted otherwise. On the other hand, John is inherently kind and generous, almost as if he is hardwired to be so. John couldn't do wrong even if he tried. So, who is the better person here? Some might argue that Julia's goodness rooted in choice and effort is more commendable. Others may challenge the notion that true goodness necessitates the freedom to act otherwise and contend that God should be akin to John without any deficiency in goodness. This dilemma closely relates to a thought puzzle known as Euthyphro dilemma. Does God do what is good because it's inherently good, or is something good merely because God does it? The first option implies that God adheres to an independent concept of goodness that even God must obey. Conversely, the second option suggests that whatever God wills automatically becomes good. So if God were to will something horrifying, it would inexplicably become deemed as good. Now, omniscience. Omniscience sounds straightforward, knowing absolutely everything there is to know. Things get tricky when we dive into whether God knows things about the future and how this impacts our free will. The debate revolves around whether statements about the future have truth values in the present. Some argue that future statements only become true when they actually happen, while others believe that tense specific facts are eternally true. For instance, you might think that it is true right now that you'll finish listening to this or watching this video in 3 minutes. Because God is often seen as eternal and beyond time, it seems logical that God should know all facts at all times, regardless of the complexities of time for beings like us. Now let's say God knows that you will submit your term paper 4 minutes before the deadline. That might seem to eliminate the possibility of you choosing to turn it in earlier. Now, here is where thinkers start to differ in their responses, and that is often based on their beliefs about free will and whether anyone, including God, can truly predict the future, and whether there are already truths about the future. So all these attributes that we discussed pose individual questions and puzzles, but when we start to connect the dots between them, even more concerns come to light. Consider this: omnipotence, omniscience, and complete benevolence, when combined, seem to imply the absence of unnecessary suffering and injustice. God would not only know when bad things are going to happen, but also have the power to prevent them. Being entirely good, God would naturally want to stop such events from occurring, right? Yet, we observe suffering in our lives around the world, which challenges the compatibility of these attributes. These questions may not yield easy answers, but they propel us toward more meaningful debates about the nature and existence of God. Moreover, they shed light over the diverse perspectives different individuals have. Those who believe in God with these attributes, those who refute such a God's existence, and those who remain undecided. In conclusion, the concept of gods remain an enduring enigma, a source of endless debate, discussion, and changing viewpoints. But above discussion and dialogue comes contemplation. So as we contemplate in our relentless pursuit of understanding, we embark on a journey marked by curiosity, reflection, and dialogue. So whether we find clarity or further complexity along the way, our exploration of the concept of God remains an endless and loud testament to human quest for knowledge and meaning. I hope you continue your journey for knowledge, for meaning, and for truth. Best of luck and see you next time.